Dear listeners, we would love to get to know you better. Please write in the comments which country and city you are watching us from. Thank you.
Sometimes, life itself gets in the way of living. You become so busy that you merely exist instead of truly living. You take a deep breath, keep doing what you're doing, and then realize about an hour later that you forgot to take another breath. Many people say this is just how life is these days, but if that's true, is it really worth it? I mean, having it all is great, but is it worth giving up life itself? Watching the microwave endlessly blink 11 o'clock every second was starting to get on my nerves. Not to mention my headache was growing worse. You'd think that after living in Florida for over 20 years, I'd have gotten used to these damn power outages, but I hadn't. All these years, I kept telling myself I needed to get one of those big whole house batteries to fix the issue, but apparently, I never found the time to do it. It just wasn't that important, especially now. When I got home that evening, I deliberately didn't turn on the overhead light in the kitchen. Yet those damn LED lights on all the appliances in the room gave off enough light for me to read the newspaper. It was dark, I was alone, and I wanted it to stay that way. I had to shift my entire weight on the bar stool just to get more comfortable, and now I regretted letting Connie talk me into choosing these stools. They were about 10 centimeters too high, the seats lacked proper padding, and they cost nearly 40% more than the ones I originally wanted. In the end, I gave in because I figured I'd never actually sit on them, and if I did, it would only be to grab a quick Saturday morning breakfast. Who would have guessed I'd end up stuck on one of them for more than 2 hours? Certainly not me. This has really been a hellish evening, I thought to myself, although, strictly speaking, it wasn't evening anymore. Glancing at the clock, I saw that it was nearing 2:15 a.m. Being older and a long-distance runner, ice packs had become my best friends. After returning from a 20 to 25 kilometer run, I'd grab a couple of frozen packs from the freezer, wrap them around my Achilles tendons, and place another pair under my swollen feet. I hated being cold, but I hated pain even more. I never even knew what plantar fasciitis was until I got it and suffered through it for 3 or 4 months. I learned the hard way what subpar running shoes, running too fast, and skipping post-run icing could do to a body that wasn't as young as it used to be. 10 minutes of running, 10 minutes of rest, that's how it usually went. The first 10 minutes were excruciating, but once my legs partially went numb, it wasn't so bad. I just needed to apply and remove ice a couple of times to ensure I minimized the damage the road had inflicted on my legs. Sometimes in winter, I would take off my shoes and step waist deep into our unheated pool. It worked just like ice, but cooled my entire body. Even in Florida, winter could sometimes be damn cold. But this time, the ice wasn't under my feet, it was wrapped around my hands and both sides of my face. The period between Thanksgiving and New Year's had always been my favorite time of the year. I even saved up a week of vacation to enjoy every minute of the holidays. Even the annoying annual office Christmas party was almost bearable. As a manager, I was expected to attend, or at the very least, make an appearance, have dinner, and socialize with the other employees before slipping out unnoticed. For the first hour and a half, they had an open bar, and most of them did everything they could to get completely wasted during that time. I sat quietly, sipping a beer and doing my best to keep things under control, which wasn't always easy. Over the past 10 years or so, I had to call the police more than once because someone either tried to drive while drunk or simply drank too much. As I said, it wasn't always pleasant. My wife, Connie, had graciously attended my holiday party until last year when she claimed a headache, which we both knew was a blatant lie. It didn't matter. I let it go, especially when she said my presence at her party wasn't required. There is a God, I told myself that night, but I was wrong. This year, I asked if she wanted to come with me. She started making excuses 2 weeks beforehand, so I knew her answer even before I asked. Why haven't you come along, and we could have our own party when you get home, if it's not too late, she suggested. Damn it, with an invitation like that, I wasn't planning to stay for dinner on Saturday evening, but I ended up staying. However, I still managed to get home a little after 10:30, and that night we really did have our own intimate holiday party. I waited to hear about her party, but she remained rather quiet about it, not that I was eagerly anticipating the details. I was determined not to attend and was preparing to make her the same suggestion she'd made to me weeks earlier. But then, I saw the dress she had bought specifically for the occasion. I understand that holiday dresses are meant to be festive, daring, and perhaps a little short. But what she planned to wear exceeded all three categories. You're not seriously thinking of wearing that dress on Saturday night, are you? What's wrong with my dress? I think it looks stunning on me, she replied quickly with a hint of sarcasm. Sweetheart, that dress says you're ready for anything, and right now. Don't you have something a bit more conservative? You don't think I can pull off this dress, do you? You think it's too young and attractive for me, is that it? Is that what you're trying to say? I paused for a long moment, thinking carefully before responding. Connie, in that dress, you look like a cheap drifter. I didn't know how else to phrase it. You're saying I look like a drifter. In that dress, you would. Don't get me wrong, showing it off and wearing it with me is one thing, but for a holiday party on your own, it's too much. All right, she didn't take my words well, and honestly, I knew she wouldn't. Even though it was December, the next couple of days in our relationship were icy cold. But it was the holiday season, and nothing could ruin my mood. The following Saturday was her company party, and I watched as Connie started getting ready. I observed her every move. When she came out of the bathroom, fully made up and looking stunning, she noticed that I had put on my good suit. Where are you going? With you, to your party. I thought you said you didn't want to go to that thing again this year. Connie, do you really think I'm going to let you go to the party looking like that without an escort? What? You don't trust me. In that outfit, I don't have a single reason to trust you. The look she gave me said it all. Fine, but when we get there, you're on your own. She finished getting dressed and looked absolutely stunning. So stunning, in fact, that I tried to convince her not to go at all. Why don't we go somewhere, have a nice quiet dinner, and then come back home so I can torment your body for the rest of the night? She didn't offer me a second option as we pulled up to the Hilton Hotel, where the party was being held. Like every other corporate party I've ever attended, the employees gathered in one area while the rest of us, myself included, aimlessly wandered around the hall and adjacent spaces. I saw Connie chatting, probably with her friends, so after an hour, I decided to make a few new friends myself. Most of the guys I talked to were just as bored as I was, though by now they were already drunk after an hour of non-stop drinking at the open bar. I struck up a conversation with a few wives, some of whom knew my wife, though it seemed like everyone knew her boss, Doug. Most people described him as slightly above societal trash, while a few others mentioned he was below whale dung. Terms like arrogant, god complex, jerk, and a few even less flattering words were tossed around, comments coming from stone-cold sober spouses. Given all the money they were throwing around, I thought dinner would be something special, but it wasn't. It was your average steak of medium quality, some sort of marinated chicken and blackened fish. Honestly, I've seen better prepared fish at McDonald's. Needless to say, I wasn't impressed. It seemed most of their budget went into the bar, which stayed open until midnight or until the last employee passed out. I had 2 cocktails at the beginning of the night, and after that, I just walked around with a half-filled glass of wine. Enjoying yourself, one of her company's executives asked me. I was just about to respond when he continued, "You're Connie's husband, aren't you? She's one of our rising stars. Doug has taken her under his wing to groom her for a team leader position. You must be proud of her," he smiled. I smiled back and thanked him before he moved on to the next group of people. By the way, where is my promising star? I stood up and looked around. She was nowhere to be seen. With the remnants of my drink in hand, I set off to find my wife. The party occupied 1 hall in the lobby and 2 adjoining hotel suites. After spending 10 minutes wandering the corridor without finding Connie, I headed into one of the suites. There were, of course, plenty of drunken employees. I just hoped someone was keeping an eye on them and collecting car keys. I was about to leave the first room when I passed by the bathroom and leaned against the wall near the door. And that's when I heard it. "Stop it. Control yourself. Steve is with me tonight." It was my wife Connie's voice. "I can't help it that you brought his sorry ass with you tonight. Connie, I booked us a Dan room for later. I thought you said he wasn't coming. That's not my fault. He took one look at the dress you bought me and wouldn't let me leave the house without him. Who does he think he is? Your lord and protector. Well, he's a bit late for that, isn't he?" I heard his laughter. It seemed my promising star was climbing the corporate ladder on her back that I caught bits of muffled conversation, including something about getting rid of me. I was just glad I wasn't drunk. This was shaping up to be unpleasant. The champagne bottle in the ice bucket next to me was empty, but it didn't matter. It would do just fine. You see, Doug was 8 years younger, at least 20 kilos heavier and 10 centimeters taller. I had to make my move count. Connie came out first, adjusting what she so eloquently called her dress. She walked right past me without even noticing, and Doug, he followed her out immediately. "Doug, you know what? You're a real asshole," I said as he glanced to his left and saw me standing there. Then that bastard looked me straight in the eye and smiled. Bad move. I hid the bottle in my left hand behind my back. I think if he had done anything else, I might not have escalated things, but the look he gave me said it all. I had your wife, and there's nothing you can do about it. Connie heard me shout that jerk's name and turned to face us. Everything happened quickly, yet it felt like it was in slow motion. Even an empty champagne bottle hitting someone square on the head should have caused unbearable pain. In the movies, the bottle would shatter into pieces and Doug would pass out. But this wasn't the movies, and although Doug was hurt, he didn't lose consciousness. I had never been much of a fighter. In elementary school, I got into a fight once and got my ass handed to me, but this was different. He was going to pay, and I didn't care what it would cost me. The next 5 minutes were filled with punches. I landed a few good ones and even broke Doug's nose with a headbutt before 5 rather large guys managed to pull us apart. I don't know who looked worse, but if you ask me, I kicked his royal ass. Doug spat blood and cursed at me, but this time, I smiled, which only enraged him further. There was more yelling and shouting of threats before someone suggested it might be a good idea if I left right away. Connie was crying. Her mascara and makeup were streaked down her cheeks, and she looked awful. "Don't come home. I don't care where you go, but don't come back to the house," I said to her before 2 hotel security guards escorted me to the parking lot. Nearly blind in one eye, I drove home slowly. I parked in the garage and, entering the kitchen, headed straight to the fridge. I grabbed 4 ice packs and a Corona. I sat on that Dan bar stool for several hours, applying ice, drinking, and waiting for a call from the police. They never showed up, maybe tomorrow, but definitely by Monday, I thought, looking at my cold, red, and swollen hands. My vacation was going to be different this year, which in itself was an understatement. Christmas was a week and a half away, and as usual, I hadn't done any Christmas shopping, but I had next week off, so that wouldn't be a problem. Especially for a single person, I thought, sticking my hand in my pocket hoping they were still there. Doug had accused me of assault and battery. After I told my lawyer the whole messy story, he made a few calls, and the charges seemed to disappear into thin air. Apparently, someone in upper management didn't want the company's name associated with the incident. My lawyer assured them he would use every trick in the book to make them look as bad as possible in the press. A scorned husband catching his wife cheating at her company's Christmas party. Now that could make for a better holiday headline. Doug was a complete bastard, but he was their bastard over the next week. Connie called a million times, but I never picked up. My 2 sons spoke to her, but they refused to take her side. Looks like I raised them right. Everyone tried their best to make my holidays cheerful, but the atmosphere was heavy, like the lingering smell of death. All the legal intricacies and other nonsense could wait until after the holidays. There was no point in ruining Christmas for the rest of my family. Looking out the window of her parents' house, Connie's mother saw a FedEx truck pull up. The driver, wasting no time, hurried to the front door. "Package for Connie Moore," he said to her mother. She signed for it and handed it to her daughter. "Connie, this is for you. It's from Steve." She looked at the small package wrapped in paper. Opening it, Connie stared at a black velvet ring box. Smiling, she opened the box and immediately dropped it to the floor. 2 bloodied front teeth bounced a couple of times on the tile before coming to a stop in front of her father. Glancing down, he picked them up, slipped them into his pocket, and walked away from his sobbing daughter. The divorce papers and a letter arrived the day after Christmas. Connie had hoped to persuade me not to file for divorce, at least until she had the chance to finally talk to me, but, as I understand it, that wasn't going to happen. She tore open the envelope and looked at the typed letter. "Dear Connie, I hope you enjoyed your little Christmas gift. Doug himself would never have given it to you. I'm just glad I could. Honestly, I don't really want to know why anymore, because at this point, it wouldn't make any difference. I'm sure you had your reasons. I just hope they were worth what you gave up. To avoid any misunderstandings. Let me make one thing clear. I fought Doug that night not to win you back. After what I heard and saw, We were over long before you stepped out of that bathroom. What I did was entirely my own decision. I suppose I could have simply walked away and divorced you, you wretch, but Doug would have gotten off scot-free, and that, I'm afraid, was something I couldn't allow. That he's definitely a tough bastard. I thought a bottle to the head would have taken him down for good, but deep down, I'm almost glad it didn't. Don't get me wrong, it hurt when they threw my ass out, but at least he knew that, for once in his life, someone wasn't going to back down and quietly fade into the night. I didn't even see those 2 teeth until I was being escorted out. I grabbed them before that asshole could. That I understand that Doug lost his job, but all you got was a demotion. You must have made quite an impression on management. Maybe, like Doug, one of them will take you under their wing and look after you just like he did. Although, I bet your coworkers might have a few new nicknames for you. The lying adulteress and the housewife are probably the nicest ones I can think of. Please, just sign the divorce papers so we can put an end to this charade. You'll keep what you have, and I'll keep what's mine. We can sell the house, because honestly, it's too big for me, and it will always remind me of what we once had done. I've told our sons that you're a cheater and unfaithful. I'm sorry for that, but you're still their mother and deserve respect, at least as much as they're willing to give you. I'd like to thank you for having a good time and wish you all the best, but I can't. Honestly, I hope you come down with some horrible disease and die a painful death for what you did to us. And when our good friends ask what happened, I plan to tell them exactly what went down. Maybe you can explain the why to them if they still want to talk to you, your soon-to-be ex-husband. My lawyer received the signed papers on New Year's Eve. It looked like I was going to start the new year with a clean slate. That I was told that Connie quit her job and left after 30 days, but I never bothered to ask where she went. I figured my boys would tell me someday. My family and a few of my friends think it was foolish of me to throw away a 25-year marriage over an affair, especially one I'd already avenged. When they asked me about it, I'd look the guy straight in the eye and ask if he'd lend me his wife for the weekend for a little sexual release. Are you out of your mind? That was their usual response. But you can forgive her when she comes back on Monday, and it'll only be one time. I think they finally started to understand what it felt like to walk in my shoes, even for a moment. I posed the same question to at least 6 of my friends, and only one told me I should go for it. The only problem was that his wife was 74 years old, hard of hearing, and needed a walker to get around. Ted grinned, and I called him a jerk, but I told him I'd think about it. Yeah, right. Now, whenever I read a story about a husband willingly becoming a cuckold, I look at my scarred knuckles. Yeah, it was worth it, and I'd do it all over again without hesitation. I think to myself that it's a shame there are so few of us.
Thanks to everyone who took the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing if you haven't already. Feel free to share your thoughts on the events in the comments below. Take care.